And we are going to switch gears and talk about Brahmastra Part 1 Shiva, which I got a chance to watch in theaters. I actually watched it in Telugu. And the reason I say that specifically is because this star-studded lineup is full of stars from all across India. And by all across India, I mostly just mean Tollywood and Bollywood. So in in the most realistic sense of like what we pay attention to the most coming out of India, those are two of the I guess most watched industries. And so we have Ranbir Kapoor and Alia Bhatt, who, if you guys don't know, actually met on the set of this movie for the first time, ended up falling in love, eventually got married. Now they're having a kid, and this movie's finally released. So it's like a timeline of like their relationship. And we also had Amitabh Bachchan, we had Shah Rukh Khan, we had Nagarjuna, we had Moni Roy. Oh my God. Everything about this movie was setting it up for success. I believe.
Shreya, before you dive into that, I just want to also elaborate on what the anticipation was and kind of like the excitement around this. The budget for this movie was huge. I saw the trailer with M in the theaters, and I remember both of us
way back in February.
Way back in February, I saw this trailer and I was immediately hooked. I was really ready for this. However, I did see Ranbir Kapoor and Shamshera, and I knew that one wasn't doing so well, so I didn't know how Brahmastra would do. So first, I just want to kind of start that off by saying, Shreya, what were your expectations? And then kind of dive into whether or not it was met or not.
Okay. So what I went into it hoping was an Indian Avengers. I wanted it to be like the most iconic concept of an action movie meets like this superhero style like blockbuster. I wanted it to do well in the box office. I was excited to go see it. And the fact that it was made in multiple different languages as it was released, I was like, it has to be good. Like however much amount of money I spent on this ticket has to be worth it. It wasn't. It wasn't.
Oh, no.
It wasn't. Come on. Like I saw these names in the cast. You were right, Mike. Well, I saw the trailer and it was supposed to be so good. And for any of you who haven't seen the trailer or the movie, it actually follows the story of Ranbir Kapoor, who is part of something called the Brahmansh. And the Brahmansh is the protectors of these like elements, basically the elements that control the universe, that control the world. And in that, there's something called the Brahmastra, which is like something that controls the entirety of the universe. It's like this element that controls the entirety of the universe. And this Brahmansh is built to kind of control all the little pieces around it. So each of them have their own power. Someone owns the power of like Nandi, which is the power of 1,000 bulls. And like, they're all like really interesting powers. Someone owns the power of the sword. Someone owns the power of air. Someone owns the power of fire. Like all of them are basically like powerful figures, but they're all
like they're marrying a lot of Indian mythology into a cinematic universe with good special effects, right?
Exactly what I thought. Exactly. It pulled in so many elements of this concept of Greek mythology mixed with like infinity stones. So the story follows just this one specific person, Shiva, who's played by Ranbir Kapoor, who owns the power of fire like Agni, but he just doesn't know it. Now, in this process of him learning that he was born into the Brahmansh, and he just, he never knew that because he was an orphan, he runs into Alia Bhatt's character and he falls in love. And he's like, you know what? This entire time in my life, ever since like I've never met my father, my mother passed away when I was really young. So I haven't really experienced love or someone who's like my own. And once he meets her, it's just like an instant connection for him. He's like, something about you has brought me back to me. But in that process, he realizes that she ignites a part of his heart that also ignites this power with him that ignites his power for fire. And that's when he starts coming back into touch with it, because that power takes him on this journey where he's like, oh, I'm really part of the Brahmansh. And I won't tell you guys exactly what happens because I'm going to ruin it. But he finds out that he was actually born into it. And the story follows his parents, and we'll run into all of these. We'll run into like Nagarjuna's character. We'll run into Shah Rukh Khan's character, who all play different people who lead him on the journey to figuring that out.
I have a trivia about Shah Rukh Khan's character before you go on with that. Shah Rukh Khan's character plays a scientist called Mohan Bhargava. By the way, this is the same character that Shah Rukh Khan played in a movie called Swadesh years ago. He played this scientist with NASA who visits his village in India and then stays back because he has to do something for the country. There's no electricity. He tries all these methods to, help his village come into just help his village with his knowledge of science. So that character was Mohan Bhargava, and so is this character.
I love when they tie things in like that. That what?
Yes.
For all of you out there, we better see you guys tweeting us. We better see you guys commenting on our Instagram. That is @TheySeesLiveGram, or on Twitter. That is @TheySeesLive. We're even on Facebook. You know what? We're probably on your grandmother's Facebook too. That is @TheySees.live. Don't forget to tell us what you guys think about that. And did you even know that fact? We bet you didn't, because I mean, Mike and I probably didn't. So in this process of the story, guess who stole the show? The person who plays the villain, our incredible Moni Roy. That girl is our modern day Nagin. She comes from this background of these cynical characters played in modern day Bollywood, like, you know, Hindi serials, right? And she was built for this role. Like, this girl knew what she was doing. She has played these characters. This archetype is like in her blood, and you see her on screen and immediately you know that she's stealing the show. Like, in the wide scheme of every single person who played in this movie, she was the one. That girl carried it to the end. She carried this movie on her back, y'all. She carried it on her back. And am I excited to see part 2? Yes, because I think the story is exciting. Did I like part 1? No, because
did you see that small little 1-minute cameo of Deepika Padukone?
No, what? Where?
She is going to be in part 2 as the water element.
You're joking.
Didn't you see the cameo? Well, you know,
this is how we know that Shrey didn't enjoy it, because she missed out on these little.
Wait, she was looking at Nagarjuna, and she's trying to figure out where Ranbir went, and Ranbir Kapoor's dance, and I don't know how they can fit.
There's so much happening
in a cinematic universe. They have time, you know. All the Avengers series and all the cinematic universes that we've seen from MCU, the amount of romance that those guys have done, those characters have done, this movie does it. Literally.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I hate. What's with the What is with the romance? Like, this plot line, had they turned the romance down from 90% to like 10, maybe 15%, this would have been perfect. Like, this would have been perfect. But why do you need so much screen time for Alia, who literally just plays
questions throughout the movie? What was her role? She's literally asking him questions.
You know, this was the problem. This was the problem with the last Ranbir Kapoor movie, Shamshera, as well. I remember we had the same conversation with the love interest character in that movie as well. Like, this was a movie, and I want to get into this here in a second, but this was a movie that was like kind of like, I want to say, groundbreaking in the Bollywood industry in terms of the special effects, the CGI, and just like, this is something that hadn't been done before. When you do that, it needs to be jaw-dropping. It needs to stay on the point. It needs to stick with you know, everything that it's kind of, you know, hyped up to be. One of those being its very large budget. Now, Shrey, I want to ask you, was that budget shown in the theater experience? Did you feel like
it was $51 million?
Yes.
$51 million spent on this movie.
And for the sense that they put a lot into costume, set design, yes. For the special effects, really, bro, really, like, a lot of the times I would like, you know, they're supposed to have like powerful, you know, whatever, right? You'll see like random colors that don't mix with the color grading of the background, right? Like, there'll be bright yellows and oranges and greens, and then all of a sudden the scene will be really dark. And I'm like, you can tell someone like put this in post-production. You know what I'm talking about? Like, who was in your special effects department
this is a Fox Star Studio movie. This is backed by Disney. For God's sake.
Yeah.
How can you mess? How can a Disney production mess VFX?
Please, someone answer that question for me. It's like they basically had a whole department that focused on making the movie, the cinematography, and then they were just like, you know what, everybody from animation come in, and like nobody talked to each other. They were just like, you know what, wherever they're moving their hand, just put something, and like nobody gave them any instructions.
Because they were so focused on creating some depth, adult depth in the Ranbir Arya relationship, which was stupid because it you know, that love affair just didn't make sense. I don't know what she was doing in the movie.
Exactly. Except for a few moments, that special effects doesn't come into play. Like, it doesn't, like, there are a few moments where they create these animals on screen that I'm like, wow, whoever did that, like, get them a raise. But aside from that, like all of the other moments were just so childish. It's like really adult movie childish animation. Where did it come from? But you know,
and you know, compare it with good animation like RRR had, which you can't. It's like a poor cousin. This is what we wrote in our review too, by the way. You know, that it is a poor cousin to RRR. There's absolutely no comparison, and they've spent a lot more money on this than RRR ever did.
That was one of the most cinematically like pleasing movies of 2022. Like it was